so please mute. Hello everyone and welcome to the OCX Webinar Week. My name is Amandine and I'm very happy to have you all here. This series is part of the lead up to OCX 2026, which will take place in Brussels. It's the place where the open collaboration community meets to connect, learn, and exchange ideas. If you haven't registered yet, the link is in the chat. Don't miss it. Now, I would like to give the floor to my colleague Natalia, who will briefly present sponsorship opportunities at OCX. Natalia, you have the floor.
Thanks so much, Amandine, and hello everyone. So I'm Natalia and I'm part of the marketing team at Eclipse Foundation. And as she mentioned, I will just take a couple of minutes to introduce you to our sponsorship opportunities at OCX. So by sponsoring OCX, your organization gets brand recognition and visibility among the around 600 participants that we expect on site. And that includes developers, decision makers, software architects, engineers, open source leaders, and many, many more. What's also new next year is that we will have 5 co-located events focused on different topics and industries besides the main track. But now let's go to the good part, which are the sponsorship packages. We have 5 different sponsorship packages and also 10 add-ons that you can choose from. And that includes a Raffle bar, a photo booth, wellness lunch, and so many more. So you can make your sponsorship experience more custom and personalized. So each sponsor will benefit from visibility on site throughout the 3 days of the event, but also promotion online. We have over 100,000 subscribers on our monthly newsletter, so all the sponsors get visibility there. We have almost 300,000 followers on all our social media accounts combined, that we are also promoting our sponsors there. So the earlier you sign up for sponsorship, the more promotion you will get because we'll start earlier. And that's also a way to secure a booth because we have really limited availability for booths. And also for those who are looking for some extra exposure, the higher tiers, which are Diamond and Platinum, also will get the chance to sponsor specific co-located events of their choice so they can get a more targeted visibility. And we are offering that at no extra cost. So if this sounds interesting to you, please share this information with your marketing team or with your organization, because we would be happy to discuss these sponsorship opportunities further. But there's also opportunities for you as an individual to get involved with OCX. So you can either submit a talk. We have the call for proposals open until the 13th of November. So there's just 1 week left. So submit your talk soon. And you can also register to participate as an attendee. And I can assure that it's a really, really fun event to take part in. I was there last year and we had a lot of fun activities. We had a Kahoot game, we had a magic show, and of course, a lot of opportunities to network and build your connections. So I really hope to see you all there. And that's it from my side. And back to you, Amandine. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalia. And now let's go to the webinar. Today, we are joined by, we are joined by Javier Valiño, Rajiv Rajani, Sebastian Steinbuss, and Arno Weiss, who will be sharing their insight on Eclipse Dataspace Working Group community call. Feel free to post your question throughout the session using the chat or the Ask a Question tab. We will go through them together at the end of all presentation. And make sure to stay until the end because we will have a live raffle giveaway for attendees. Let's get started. Javier, over to you.
Thank you very much, Amandine. Thank you very much, Natalia, for this introduction. So let me go directly sharing my screen so we can start. There we go. Good. So you can see my screen. That's great. So this is what we will be discussing today. So as you already received on the calendar invitation, I will start with the review of the working group achievements, especially focusing on what we did in 2025 and our plans for 2026, plus what is in for you as data space enthusiasts and experts with respect to OCX 26. So you will see that there is plenty to do there for us. So this is being presented by me, Javier Valiño, as the Dataspaces Program Manager here at the Eclipse Foundation. And then we have three very interesting presentations. As anticipated, we will start with the review of the Dataspaces Working Group Specification Projects and Strategy for Standardization, which is presented by Rajiv Rajani, CTO of iSHARE, and also our chair for the Specification Committee at the Eclipse Dataspaces Working. And then we will present the two protocols that were released recently, and by recently I mean this summer, and that will be hopefully transposed into standards at ISO IC level very soon. You will hear from this, both for the Eclipse Dataspace protocol, which is presented by Sebastian Steinbuss, CTO of IDSA, and also the chair of our steering committee at the Dataspaces Working Group, and Arno Weiss, which is a developer at SAP, and also one of the committers and masterminds behind the Eclipse Dataspace Decentralized Claims protocol. And as Amanda just told you, please write any questions you can have while we are presenting, and we will try to address them all at the very end at the Q&A session that will last for 30 minutes, so we will have time to go through any of the questions you might have. So with any further ado, let's go to the presentation. So as I was anticipating, this presentation I will be providing is made up of two parts. The first part is just about the working group. As Amandine introduced, we are trying to combine what we usually do every quarter, which is the Dataspaces Working Group community call, together with the second part, which is more about OCX and what can we find in OCX if we are talking about Dataspace. So starting for the first one, just a couple of slides to set the scene. So we are not something new. We have been live since 2024, and as you can see, we are lying upon a set of 7 different projects. Some of those will be presented today, and some of other ones you might already know, such as IDSA, for instance. We have a large set of contributors. 20 organizations are currently members of the working group, 11 strategic members plus 9 supporter members. We have been trying to be visible in events and organizing community calls, and we also try to do some noise at social network level. So hopefully you can, or you already are familiar with what we are doing, but I am here also to present the working group itself. So that's the slide I usually use in order to present what we are doing, which is kind of summarizing both the motivation and also the mission and vision for the working group. All these things, you can find it on the charter. If you navigate and through our webpage, you can access to the charter, which is the page including all these things. So what are we aiming for? What are the ambitions of the working group, the mission and everything? So this slide is read left to right. From the left, you can see the motivation or the origin of the request or the things that we are trying to deliver, which is basically the Data Act at European level. But although we are trying to provide an international perspective, this data space idea, as you know, was generated at European level, and therefore the European Commission was pushing also for data spaces on the Data Act. And especially if you go to Chapter 8, there are 2 articles that are talking about interoperability, Article 33 and 36, and there the European Commission is explicitly saying that they see the digital single market happening through data spaces. So we are in this process of trying to provide the baseline for those data spaces to be available. And we are trying to do, as we are an open source foundation, through open source. And as open source stewards, we are also very pragmatic, and we try to provide two concrete things. You can see it on the middle part of the slide. First concrete thing, open source for specification and standardization. This will be the focus of our meeting today. As we already anticipated, we will talk about our overall strategy for standardization, so I will leave Rajiv to explain this. And 2 out of the 5 projects that are already under the purview of the working group. For this, we are building these 5 protocols that hopefully will be transposed into international standards soon. But we do some other things. The other big thing that we are trying to provide as part of the working group is adoption. So we are also working together with our open source projects. So you might be familiar with IDSA, but many other projects that are under the umbrella of Eclipse Foundation for Dataspaces. And we are working with our members and the projects to make sure that the protocols are being implemented in the different releases of the implementation projects, and those projects are as adopted as possible. And for this, we are also interfacing with external sources that are using these open source protocols, so they are well known and they are also adopted further. So that's in a nutshell what we do in the working group. And this is the plan for 2026. We are now in the process of defining our objectives and everything that we are going to do throughout the next year. And as you can see, there are 4 main pillars or objectives for us in 2026. They are not listed in priority order, but I will go through all of them. The first one is about growing in membership. So if you are interested in joining or you feel curious about what we are doing and how can you collaborate, please let me know. And just as a spoiler of what we will be focusing on 2026, we would like to grow in membership, especially on the adopter side. So we are now, we have a membership base of very knowledgeable companies and organizations that are helping us building up the protocols and the projects, but now it's time as well for the adopters to chip in and to try to collaborate together with us in making the outreach of what we are doing and adopting what we are doing in a wide manner. Second objective, which is mainly our primary focus in the past and will continue as a primary focus in the near future, which is standardization and specification. We focus on providing these projects in order to have open source specification protocols that are handling interoperability in dataspaces. And now that we are starting the release phase, as you will see today, we will also move into the next phase, hopefully soon, which is the transposition at international level for standardization. Then we are working on adoption, as we were saying. So we would like our implementation projects, such as IDSA, to be widely used, and we will help them in order to achieve this. For this, one important thing that we are exploring is the branding and compatibility program that will hopefully materialize in 2026, which is as well for aim at certification to foster this adoption. And finally, outreach. So we want us to be visible. We want you to know what we are doing, and therefore we will be doing this kind of webinars and community calls, and we will try to be visible as well in relevant Dataspaces events throughout the year. This is just a slide for you to know what we consider best about the working group if you want to join. And I will not go into much detail because time is constrained today, but there are 3 main categories. The first top layer, you can see it's about standardization. If you are interested in influencing the standards, this is the right way to do it, or the right place to do it. The second row is for community driven. So if you want to be aware of everything that's happening and you want to also contribute back to the open source community, that's also a good place to be. And finally, to position your place as trusted developer and certified developer in the projects that are under the purview of the working group, this might be as well interesting for you. So very quickly, OCX 26 and Dataspaces. So this is just a quote from our Chief Membership Office on how OCX might be interesting for you. As already anticipated, mark your calendars. It will happen in 21st to the 23rd of April 2026 in Brussels. And just for you to know, these were our OCX 24 sponsors. Hopefully they will continue in OCX 26, but just for you to have a glimpse of what you can see in terms of sponsors and also what you can see in terms of attendees. So it is always difficult when you are attending a new conference to see what is the audience, what are the prospects I might be networking with. So this slide is just meant for you to be aware of what is at least what we did in 2024 for the OCX 24. This is the split of roles and also industry representation. But going to the essence, this is the program. As you know, OCX is made up of 5 different co-located events, and I will focus in 2 of them, primarily 1, but maybe 2 of them. The Open Community for AI, I have a slide dedicated for this. There is a special track on Dataspaces, so just keep this in mind. And also Open Community for Research. In OCX 24, we did Open Community for Research dedicated to Dataspaces, but this time is not dedicated to Dataspaces, but we will see a lot of Dataspaces tracks as well in research. But as I was saying, there is a special placeholder for Dataspaces in the Open Community for AI co-located event. As you can see, is the 5th topic inside the program. And as you can see, everything that is listed there is very linked to what I was explaining before. So what are we doing in trying to foster interoperability, specification, standardization, adoption, inclusion of artificial intelligence in Dataspaces, and how can we act as enablers for these kind of things? So there is a lot of room for whatever you think is interesting around Dataspaces, and therefore I would encourage you to submit your talk. We are closing the call for talks very soon, and very soon is next week. So if you are still interested in submitting a talk, now it's the perfect time to do it. And as well, if you are sure that you will be there with us in April, you can also register and take advantage of the discount rates that we are having now. And with this, hopefully I didn't spend too much time in this intro part. And as anticipated, questions, we will take those at the very end. Therefore, I will leave the room to Rajiv for the next presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Javier. Let me share my screen. I hope my screen is visible. Yeah. Hello, good evening, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Rajiv Rajani. I'm CTO of iSHARE Foundation, as well as the chair of Eclipse Dataspace Working Group Specification Committee. And here I would present a bit about the Specification Committee and the projects under the Specification Committee and where we stand with that perspective. Let's start. So which specification projects do we have? So this is a draft view of how the specification projects are related to each other. It's not final, it's still under discussion because we have new projects coming in, and we would like to see how they relate to each other and better explain to our community how these relates to each other. So let me explain this from my perspective, how I see this. So we have data plane protocols, which use existing data sharing or exchange protocols to enable the dataspace connectors or dataspace protocol and the rest of the protocols to work with data planes. A new project called Data Plane Signaling Protocol has been introduced recently. This enables a seamless transfer from control plane to data plane and initiate the data plane process. Of course, dataspace protocol, most of you are aware, but of course, also Sebastian will be taking or giving you a bit more about that project in a bit. But essentially, that forms the core of all the dataspaces because it allows you to have data discovery, contract negotiation, and transfer orchestration as the base set of protocols required for every kind of transaction. And on top, you have the decentralized claims protocol, which allows you to have the credential issuance and presentations. So it allows, it completes the dataspace protocol in the sense of connecting to the identities and how the identities are exchanged and how the authentications and the credentials are being issued and verified. And on top, you have the profile specification projects like conformity assessment and data rights policy profiles. So conformity assessment is about making sure that your schemas of your various credentials, policies are defined, and a methodology for evaluating their conformance has been standardized in that sense, so that it works seamlessly across all the protocols in a way. And the data rights policy profile also standardizes the way the authorizations are exchanged, irrespective of the policy languages being used across the layers, across the participants. And specifically, it connects to the data rights holder in a way that it can provide the right set of authorizations in a decentralized manner, so that it allows better control over their data in the trusted data space exchange. Of course, all these projects comes with their own TCKs, which allows you to evaluate whether the implementations that are being made are in line with the specification projects. And this helps you to make sure that you are compliant and achieve the certifications, which you see on the right as the vertical thing. And in the green, of course, you see the Dataspace connector implementations, basically using all these protocols and implementing those protocols in their technical implementations, and complying and getting certifications with the TCKs, basically. You also see a layer of trust frameworks. As we all know, in a data spaces, trust frameworks are essential in order to have trust established between the participants and also on the service provider, and all kinds of things, various aspects of trusts. So different trust frameworks cater to those requirements, and they are sort of integrated throughout the process, and they are being referenced in the implementations, either because the schemas of the credentials could be coming from the trust framework, or the validated credentials are also coming from the trust framework. So they actually provide you the trust anchors and essential services within your data space during the transaction, or as for the participants. And at the top, you see the data space participants, which includes all kinds of different roles within the data space: the data space governance authority, the participant registration or member management, the observability services, connectors as services, marketplaces, service provider, data user, data rights, all kinds of participants which rely on all these set together, including on the ends of protocols, but also trust frameworks, but also using the technical implementations compliant to these protocols. They achieve the desired functionality through the data space by using the compliant technical implementations. And that this is how they are all interrelated in this sense. And yeah, in the Eclipse Dataspace Working Group, the projects which are highlighted in the blue are basically the Eclipse projects, and some of them we'll see now in a bit. So that concludes sort of that. That was a summary of all the projects that are currently under the Eclipse Dataspace Working Group Specification Committee purview. Let's look at the released projects so far from these projects. So there are two projects which have already been released, also mentioned by Javier. So Dataspace Protocol, which is, of course, a set of specification to facilitate interoperable data sharing between participants. More, of course, information will be shared by my colleague Sebastian. Dataspace protocol the version 1 has been released as of summer, as already explained, and is in the process towards the past transposition towards ISO JTC1 standard. Similarly, the decentralized claims protocol also has been released. It's the protocol, as I explained, about the asserting participant identities and issuing verifiable credentials and presentation of it. It has also been released as of last summer and is in the process of past transposition towards the ISO. Then, which are the still in progress or incubating projects, as they are called in this perspective, there are still 3 projects: the data rights policy profile. The data rights policy profile allows the participants, as I explained, to exchange authorizations irrespective of the policy language used, as well as it enables the decentralization from data rights holders' perspective in order to share their data rights credentials or issue their data rights credentials, basically. Second project is conformity assessment policy and credential profile. And this is more about the conformity assessment of a specific set of credentials with the specific set of schemas as defined either in trust framework or in rule book of a data space or through any of these protocols or standards. And the way to evaluate the conformity assessment is basically given here, along with some of the schemas for specific types of credentials are being provided under this project as specifications. And data plane signaling is basically an protocol which enables during the transfer orchestration a handover from control plane to data plane, so that the data plane can initiate the actual data exchange, and this is sort of standardizing that handover from control plane to data plane. Then let's have a look at the standardization strategy. Why are we doing these projects? This sort of the diagram was already shown to you, and bit of course also explained, but I'll explain it specifically from the standardization perspective and the very specification projects that we are involved in. Of course, the Data Act defines a lot of the requirements in terms of European digital market and single market, basically focusing on interoperable data exchange, trusted data exchange, and automatic data exchange. Those are the at a high level key requirements of that Data Act. And in order to do that, of course, we need the right standards which can actually help all the organizations intending to be compliant or required to be compliant to the Data Act can apply these standards and become really compliant to the requirements. And in that perspective, we see this protocols, the base protocols like the dataspace protocols, the claims protocols, and the profiles. They together help help in creating the right set of standards, which will enable all the organizations complying to these protocols or using these protocols to be compliant to the regulation by applying these standards. Through these specification projects, we intend to, of course, bring all these projects into standards route through past submission, and that is where Eclipse Foundation's process are being used, and that helps us to push all these specification projects towards the relevant standardization bodies like ISO, as well as CEN and CENELEC for the European standardization. Of course, on the bottom, you see some of the logos of the members or of the Eclipse Dataspace Working Group, which are helping in providing all the inputs to the specification projects and guiding this discussion. but also targeted towards or in liaison with the European Commission, the SSE, and other relevant projects and initiatives that are out there, so that we keep it quite aligned with the projects and initiatives across the market, but also from the key stakeholders where data spaces are being defined or are seen as the key enablers in the market. Basically, the projects that how they fit in this perspective is, one of the base protocols is Dataspace protocols, and claims protocol, which is the decentralized claims protocol, and the data plane signaling protocol will be added in this mix, somewhere in between the base protocol and the transport protocols, because the transport protocols are also used for the data protocols, data plane protocols. But of course, on the top, you see the profiles, which are basically for the conformance assessment. So the base protocols enable the actual movement of the data. The claims protocol establishes or allows you to establish the identities or verification of those identities. But those identities and the trust aspects from those identities are coming from the profiles, which are then connected to the trust frameworks or data space rulebooks in that sense, to complete the chain for the overall trusted data transactions. And in the specification projects, if you go through this vertical, as I earlier explained, that completes the base requirements of automatic, trusted, interoperable data transactions that are basically requirements of the Data Act. And all these together, when they are pushed towards these standards, then you will have these as readily available standards to be applied in your organizations, which helps you to get compliant to the Data Act. Right? Specific chapters. Okay, well, we move the question and answer section at the end. With that, I think I've concluded my presentation. So I will stop sharing, and then I guess I hand over to Sebastian.
Thanks a lot. So let me try to share my screen as well first. That should work now, and then good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're located. Glad to be with you today and continue the great introduction here on the work of our Eclipse Dataspace Working Group, and here on our baby, the Dataspace protocol. I would like to start a little bit because, well, we talked a lot about what the Dataspace Working Group is, but not really about what a dataspace is. And I will not do the whole intro into that one. But what I brought is just a definition that we are using in the standards at the moment, where a dataspace is an environment that already sounds quite cool, enabling trusted data sharing between participating parties based on an agreed governance framework along with an agreed set of policy semantic models, standardized protocols, processes, and facilitating services. And that's what we are here for. So, of course, a data space is much more than only standardized protocols, but with the protocols that we are creating here in the Eclipse Dataspace Working Group, we really have one very important lever to support the creation and the erection of data spaces. I would just like to underline that. To put this a little bit in context, what we are doing here in the Eclipse Dataspace Working Group, where we work on source code, where we work on technical specification that can be implemented, I brought to you an overview on a standard, on international standard, ISO IEC standard, on dataspace concepts and characteristics. So what are the key aspects, the key characteristics as defined in a standard on a data space? So we talk about maintaining control, of course, maintaining control about the data and how it is used. We want to establish trust between the participants in a data space. It's about discoverability of data, negotiation of data sharing contracts, the orchestration of data sharing. So it's not a data lake where you pour the data in and you can use it. Observability and interoperability as one of the key concerns. And as said, well, you see where this is leading to. We have our protocols that have already been briefly introduced by Rajiv and Javier before, that really support the creation of a data space from technical specifications point of view. And then we have those functional components, so multi-level policies, semantic models, and communication protocols. And as said, this is what we are working for at the moment, and what the Dataspace protocol and also the decentralized claims protocol really provide interoperability based on those communication protocols. So that just as a starter. Now, I think you're curious to learn more. So what is this Dataspace protocol really about? So as said, we had the introduction already on the Dataspace protocol, what it is. So it's a set of specification. So we have some aspects, and I will dive into the details of that one. But I would like to underline again what was also mentioned before. So what is really important about the Dataspace protocol is databases are erected all over the world on an international level. We are targeting to have this also as an international standard, as an ISO IEC standard. And here I would like to underline the great work and the great foundation that we have here in the Eclipse Foundation to create really high quality technical specification, technical documents, specification projects that have a sufficient quality to be transposed into an ISO standard immediately. So not doing the same stuff again, going to the different committees and discussing. We can do the transposition immediately. Of course, this takes a while. And this is the path that we are going with our specification because it really supports a broader acceptance on an international level. So here, as said, big thank to the opportunity that the Eclipse Foundation gives us here to pave this way for us. What you will find on the slides is, as mentioned before, we are a specification project. So of course you will find the specification document itself rendered from our GitHub repository. But it's also complemented, as said, with the TCK. So we talk about an interoperability specification, and you wish to test if you're interoperable with someone or something else. So you wish to run the TCK that has the key test cases, and there you can test if you're interoperable, with the idea if two independent solutions run the TCKs and they successfully pass the TCKs, the solutions will be interoperable. That's the idea, and actually it works. And of course, we need to deliver a conformant implementation, and our conformant Eclipse-based implementation are the Eclipse Dataspace components, EDC, that implement the Dataspace protocol, among other aspects, and are fully compliant to the Dataspace protocol. So that was more or less a boilerplate. So we had a couple of terms that I have on this slide already before. And the Dataspace protocol is really focusing on the aspect that we have on a control plane. We need to distinguish that, because what happened on the control plane is a generic activity that happens typically between the participants that needs to be done in a data space, independent on sectors, domains, regions, whatever. It includes cataloging, so I want to publish the data and make it available to a certain extent that someone else can find it, to achieve really flexible, dynamic, resilient data supply chains. We talk about the negotiation of data sharing contracts, of the data sharing agreements, the policies. Of course, you can take it or leave it. This is my policy, this is my contract, take it or leave it. Or you can negotiate that contract so that we can agree on certain aspects of those policies. And then as said, the orchestration of the data sharing process, because this, and you all know, could be completely different depending on various aspects. Not only talking about push versus pull, it also includes different semantic models, different protocols, all those different aspects. So this is delegated to the so-called data planes. And of course, they are reusable data planes, but they are more sector specific, maybe technology specific and things like this. So this is an important piece where we distinguish. And this is where we see that the data plane signaling protocol really supports us. This extends the current specification and supports the interaction between generic control planes and reusable data planes that we wish to see and wish to use. There's a little bit the overview, the starters. So what you will find in the Dataspace protocol, in the specification, structurally, it contains technology agnostic specification, how things work in general, including state machines, messages, message types, and message exchange diagrams, sequence diagrams. That is included, as said, technology agnostic, because we expect that we need multiple bindings to wire protocols in the future. At the moment, we have HTTP, of course, HTTPS. That is what we have as a base binding. However, it's extendable. So if you wish to see another cool binding to the protocol that you wish to see, just go for it, and we can extend it with new extensions on that. As said, the key functionalities, cataloging, data contract negotiation, I've just put here the state machine for the contract negotiation on the right, and the management, the orchestration of the data sharing. That is key part of the specification that we have here at hand. Of course, I would also like to talk about market adoption. So it's nice if some people sit together and write a cool specification. That is, well, what we have done. We have a couple of real nice and really capable people that did all the stuff. However, now we wish to see how is the market adoption. We had the release of the Dataspace protocol during summer. Rajiv mentioned that the final release was done mid of August. And now, of course, we wish to see that it is adopted by various implementation. And that the key idea of the specification projects, not to have a single reference architecture, but to have really compatible, various compatible implementations. What we see already today, and that we had from day 0 of the release of the Dataspace protocol, 2 independent implementations of the Dataspace protocol. One EDC based, which is an Eclipse project, so this is what we needed, and with a TNO, Secure Gateway, the TSG, with an independent implementation that is also fully compliant to the Dataspace protocol. What we see now is that we have a couple of EDC-based implementations that are compliant to the Dataspace protocol, and also another set of non-EDC-based implementations that are also implementing the Dataspace protocol. The IDSA Dataspace Connector report takes a look and monitors the market adoption. As said, we have at the moment 5 fully compliant implementations listed there, 2 implementations that are partly compliant. That makes 7. I do expect that we have at least 10 fully compliant implementations listed here until the end of the year. Well, because I know that there are a couple of implementations out there that are not listed here yet. So that is also my clear call to action. Download the TCK, test it, and tell us when you have done it, when you're interoperable, because we really need to understand how big the market is, and also give us a feedback. Where are the hurdles? What are the things that we need to improve? What is still missing? What can be done next? And this is where I would like to close. Of course, I have my slide with resources, and I'll give you a second to screenshot that, or to wait until the slides are shared. So these are the important information where you can find all the stuff and where you can get in contact with our community call. We have a regular monthly community call where we can discuss about all the crazy stuff that is happening in Dataspaces and on the Dataspace protocol. Closing with what's next. As mentioned before, we are supporting the adoption of Dataspaces in all over the world, and we know that there is really implementation not only in Europe. There is implementation all over the world in the various regions, from the Americas, in Asia, in Australia. What is great, and of course, we wish to keep track of that. We want to learn a little bit more on that. We have already a nice extension point identified with a data plane signaling specification. That is something that is not in the scope of the Dataspace protocol, but well, it's needed when you want to build that cool stuff. And also Rajiv mentioned that earlier before. And of course, we are supporting the adoption of the cool stuff that we're doing in the Dataspace Working Group, also in the European context, especially with the Data Act Article 33 that talks about essential requirements regarding interoperability of data sharing mechanisms and services, as well as of common European data spaces. That's super cool, and I need to read it. However, of course, we also strive for an adoption here, that the requirements that are put in the European standards that are now developing are really backed and supported by existing implementations like the DSP and TCP-based implementation. So that is our goal. There is nothing like a path transposition to Sensenlec or ETSI, so that is not the path here to go. However, I'm pretty confident that we have a good market uptake and a good solution already here, and that can be lifted to European norms and reused there as well. And with that, I think I'll hand over to the next dear speaker with Arno on the Decentralized Claims Protocol.
All right. Sebastian, thank you so much. I assume we're gonna do questions in the very end, and I'm also very aware of the fact that this is probably one of the last agenda points that each of the participant has on their plate for today, and that's why I'll try to properly address everyone, and I will. I would like to do a short poll, and I'm gonna try to execute that poll in chat. And I would love to get like thumbs up from each of you on one of the two following statements. Whether you consider yourself like a policy or a public affairs person, or rather someone who's like interested in the very details of internet-based interaction, and just to like reach everyone where they stand today, it would be great to get some feedback from you guys in the chat, where you can click react with like either a thumbs up or in the like a thumbs up or a thumbs down. I'm not seeing any reactions for now, so I'll just go ahead with like a compromise of both. I will try to lead you guys through the actual specification of the decentralized claims protocol as we have released it in summer. We have worked on it very hard for a long time, even before it was called the decentralized claims protocol. And I will try to like go through the foundations for it, and then sort of lead to where it stands today and what it tries to achieve on a very functional level. All right, so this is the webpage that you guys are seeing, and this webpage is available publicly using the link that I will also try to put in chat, and where you guys can like scroll along if you want to. This is like the foundational model, the foundational trust model, so to say, between a issuer, a holder, and a verifier. Now, this isn't something that the DCP invented. It's something that is most commonly known from the verifiable credential standards that were released by the W3C, so the World Wide Web Consortium, where they said that they wanted to like introduce a new paradigm of credentials and credential verification. And this is kind of how it works. You have three participants: the issuer, the holder, and the verifier. And the question is always, who says what about whom? Now, the person who says something is the one who issues a verifiable credential, the issuer, so to say. And it issues credentials, that's the what, about the holder, and sort of hands over the control over these cryptographically signed credentials to the holder. And then the holder can like walk around the internet, walk around the data space, presenting those credentials to the verifier, and the verifier can be sure that a set of claims were actually made about the holder by the issuer, by verifying signatures and by verifying the schema of the credential against a so-called verifiable data registry. That's the participants that we will be talking about more detailed in the presentation of the decentralized claims protocol. Now, the decentralized claims protocol attempts to solve two issues. It attempts to solve the issue of this interaction between issuer and holder, and it also attempts to solve the interaction between holder and verifier. So how does this presentation process take place between two parties, one of which is interested in another one's verifiable credentials? That's the two interactions that the DCP deals with, and it's specified in two separate sub-protocols. One of them is unsurprisingly called the Credential Issuance Protocol, and the other one is called the Verifiable Presentation Protocol, both of which in union make up the decentralized claims protocol. It's very important to understand, I think, that the DCP has always tried to build on top of existing standards as much as possible. And verifiable credentials are, in the end, just a schema for credentials and a means to sign them. And that's why we need a bunch of more infrastructure and more underlying protocols in order to make up something that's actually useful for authentication and authorization in a data space. The picture I'll show in just a second is a little more detailed than the one we talked before, and it's actually the same one in a lot of instances. What we can see here again is the issuer, so the party that says something, the holder that is usually the subject of the credential, and then the verifier who's trying to make authorization decisions. This picture also quite obviously links the DCP and the DSP together. We can see that we have three flows actually, that go beyond company boundaries. As I said, we have the DCP issuance flow on the left between the issuer and the holder. And then we have the DCP presentation flow between the holder and the verifier, but then also, and this is where we're linking to Sebastian's talk, the dataspace protocol interaction between two participant agents of the holder and the verifier. Now, each of the communication that goes beyond these boxes, that goes beyond organization boundaries, has to be standardized, and that's what the protocols are doing. It's important to understand that the decentralized claims protocol was mainly invented in order to be an overlay for the dataspace protocol, but it can be used for generic, for the authorization of generic other HTTP calls. In this instance, the dataspace protocol and the decentralized claims protocol go hand in hand quite well, in such a manner that the decentralized claims protocol is an authentication flow for the dataspace protocol. They follow the same design principles. They both put a lot of emphasis on decentralization and sovereignty of data and sovereignty of identity. So that's the pretense that everyone should be aware of. And now we're going to go into what each of these components do. Now, a lot of you may already have heard the term wallet. And an identity wallet is usually something where you store cryptographic material, where you store credentials, and it's sort of a repository for you to keep all of your identities in order and to have a single point of access where people can query them. You will not find the term wallet in the DCP specification, at least as far as I know. The term that we use for that is the credential service, which is very self-descriptive in the sense that it is the service that serves credentials to interested and authorized parties, such as the verifier's participant agent. In order to discover the credential service, the holder's DID service will usually hold a service entry that makes public the URL of the credential service. So this is how this works. The DCP also specifies the existence of the so-called STS. The STS you can imagine as a token minter. The acronym is short for Security Token Service. And this system is internal. It's internal in the sense that it's not being accessed by the issuer or the verifier. It's just a holder a holder component that only holder systems interact with. And this is how the flow starts, right? So the STS issues a token to the participant agent. The participant agent hands over that token to the verifier. The verifier uses that token in order to get credentials from the credential service. And then the credential service returns a verified representation to the verifier so that he or she can make authorization decisions for this HTTP call that is specified by the Dataspace protocol. So that's pretty much it. The DCP is a authentication protocol for HTTP requests, and it's widely used along with the Dataspace protocol and implemented in components such as EDC. And I would like to go a little bit into like the way that the protocol specification is written. And for that, we are going to take a closer look at the presentation protocol, which is the most widely implemented and the most productively used component. The credential issuance protocol is a bit fresher, but we have by now years of experience with the verified representation protocol, and this is how it works. Now, I find this picture to be quite simple, but not really self-explanatory. It actually echoes a lot of what I said earlier about the interaction between the security token service, the DIT service, and the credential service, and how a holder on the left and a verifier on the right can interact with each other. The DCP is very precise when it comes to each of these HTTP calls, like the request schemas, the response schemas. And the one thing, or at least for each of these calls that cross company boundaries, that means you will not find a normative section that specifies the interaction between a client and the STS. And you will also not find a normative section where it's specified how the holder transmits the date, like the token, the access token, to the verifier. It is specified how the verifier can query the DIT document. It is specified how the verifier can query the credential service and how to process the verified representation it receives. But like the HTTP interaction that the DCP presentation flows embedded in, so call number 3 and 8, are agnostic. It is, however, said that the token that is minted from the STS and transmitted in request number 3 should be attached to the authorization header of an HTTP request. And this is the presentation flow. The fun part about this is that the HTTP client for request number 3 is the one initiating the interaction. So from the very start, the holder remains in control about how much of their own credentials they want to expose to the verifier, and do so by specifically scoping the token, the access token, that is ultimately handed over and resolved against the credential service. So this is a measure of selective disclosure, not in the sense as it's specified in the W3C standard, but it's a means of being a little cautious about what to show to whom. And that's one fundamental requirement that we had when specifying this protocol. Right. That's the DCP. We could go through the issuance flow as well. It's not really much different. It is actually an extension of the presentation flow. So we were actually able to reuse a lot of the schemas there. And we were also allowing the implementations to reuse a bunch of the implementations that they had already made for both purposes, which is great. But what I wanted to show to you is like the way that the specification looks and how to read it. The specification has, like the Dataspace protocol, a normative section that is schemas, so JSON schemas, and a non-normative section that is the web page that we're walking through right now. What you will always see is a set of required and optional properties. and examples for how to like parameterize your query message, for example, in this case, or how to like what kind of response to expect. And this is actually all in here. So you will always find a link to a JSON schema here. And this JSON schema will then be something you can use during implementation in order to make sure that your requests are actually valid. These JSON schemas are also being used because they are normative in the TCK. And you will see that there is a TCK for the dataspace protocol, which you can see here, but there's also a TCK for the DCP, which allows you to test the components for each of the services that we were just talking about. So you are able to implement this pretty much without any interaction with the committers, but if there is something, the committers are always very happy to like read your issues, provide feedback, provide help, and sometimes even implementation guidance if that is necessary, if that is something that would be wanted by the adopters. So I hope this kind of gives you an overview about like what the vibe of the specification is, about the motivations for doing it, and about the underlying trust model and the underlying roles that come with the decentralized claims protocol. I'm sure I forgot to talk about a bunch of interesting issues, and I would be very happy for you guys to point them out so we can discuss a little further. Just from the organizational perspective, the DCP, just like the DSP, has had an official Eclipse release this summer. And as such, it will also be transposed into the international standardization process, which is kind of going hand in hand. And that's actually something that I'm very excited for, to see what the feedback is going to be from adopters from all over the world after that. And for us to like shape the future of interoperable data spaces that allow for easier and sovereign data exchange across organizational boundaries. Security is at the very heart of that. The DCP is the means to achieve that. And now I'll be happy to take questions.
Yes, I'm coming back, sorry. So yes, I really want to thanks everyone, and thank you to Javier, Rajiv, Sebastian and Arno for these great presentations. Now let's take a few minutes to go through any question that come in during the session. So let's go. I saw that there was two questions actually. The first question is, if two different connector passes TCK, are they able to talk each other, or it is just technological architecture compatibility? I don't know who can.
I think I can answer to that.
Wait, I'm going to show you on screen then.
Okay,
Perfect.
Thank you. So the TCK, lights went out, tests against compatibility to the dataspace protocol in general. If you were to have compatibility, for example, with another standard, another web standard like HTTP, to applications, each understanding HTTP really wouldn't be very useful. So you have to extend the standard in order to actually get a dataspace specific and technologically and business-wise useful interaction going. For example, in the DSP, there is the so-called policy object, and the policy object carries information about the terms and conditions of the data exchange. Now, we, as specification body, don't really know what use cases you guys might have. So we don't know what the contractual frameworks are, and that's why we can't really make any statements for that about that in the core dataspace protocol specification. We can, however, provide each and every dataspace with the necessary extension points to fill in their business logic. And that's actually what both the DSP and the DCP are doing. These extension points are usually documented in the best practices documents. And especially for DSP, I've written a longer best practices section on how to spot those extension points and how to extend them to fit to your use case. Now, if you have two connectors implementing two separate of these extensions to DSP and DCP, then they will agree to disagree with each other. So they will understand each other on the level of the DSP, but if they are not familiar with each other's data spaces conventions, then that's not going to result in any successful data exchange, and it likely shouldn't, because the trust is usually only extended to a very select part of the data space, because obviously we need to consider legal as well as security requirements. And that's why just passing the DSP TCK will not guarantee you interoperable data exchange, and I would argue that it shouldn't.
Perfect. So the other question
Maybe,
is to...
Amandine,
yes.
if I can also reply a
Sure.
little bit on top of what Arno was saying.
Sorry. Sure, I will show you on screen also, maybe. It's easier.
Great. Good. Thank you very much. And thank you, Koichi, for the question. It's really interesting. So as Arno was saying, the TCK at this stage is proving this conformance with the specification. So the messages are done right, and you are submitting what is expected, and you are receiving what is expected. But just also for everybody to know, as I was also introducing on the presentation, one of the aspirational goals for 2026 is to work on this branding and compatibility program. So what we can do today is, as we were saying, we have the DSP, we have one TCK, we have another DCP TCK, and together with the specification, and we are working for the other three different protocols, as Rajiv was also showing in his presentation. We will work on that, so we can test individually the conformance of those protocols. But as you, Koichi, are rightfully saying, it's not per se providing direct interoperability whenever a connector is implementing those, because there are other layers, as Arno was saying, on top of DCP and DSP. So this branding and compatibility is trying to pursue this idea. How can we combine different protocols that we are working on at the Eclipse Dataspace protocol together so they can serve a given purpose? So how can we combine DSP plus DCP plus maybe some of the trust protocols that we are working on as well, as you saw on Rajiv's presentation, plus, I don't know, maybe some other requirements coming directly from a given use case, a given data space, so we can certify, okay, you are ready to go into this ecosystem, because those are the protocols that they are using. And if you want to go to another ecosystem, you will have to look for this other branding, or as we call it in the Eclipse Foundation, platform specification that is matching the needs of your given ecosystem. So long story short, answering to your question, no, we cannot directly prove interoperability by two connectors passing the TCK, but hopefully we can provide the means for whoever is willing to do that with this kind of branding and platform specifications we will be working on in 2026.
Yes, and just to elaborate on this a bit more, because it's actually a question that we as SAP have also been dealing with a lot in the past weeks, months, because this is exactly a question that we've been asking ourselves in the context of Catena X, right? Catena X is a productive data space that has gone live a while ago. And obviously, as Catena X, we are very happy to have the TCK at our hands, which proves a baseline of interoperability. However, for productive data exchange in the Catena X data space, that's not enough, because CatenaX has done a bunch of extensions of the Dataspace protocol, especially when it comes to policies. And I will share with you the document that governs this. So there's CatenaX standard CX 152. And this standard is all about talking about which kind of constraints are allowed or unallowed. So for example, if you want to have a permission for a specific region, this is the JSON schema that extends the Dataspace protocol schemas and is a little bit more narrow, just for it to start working interoperably end to end. And each dataspace sort of has to do these more concrete, narrowing down the Dataspace protocol's payloads a bit more in order to express such things as, is the right to use the data exclusive? Or is the data only to be used in a specific region? Or is the data only supposed to be used for a specific duration? So, all of these things are not specified by the Dataspace protocol. I would argue they shouldn't be specified by the Dataspace protocol, but this is really up for each dataspace to specify and to sort of infuse their own requirements into the protocol stack, and then also build conformity testing specifically for their own extensions of the protocol.
I see that there are two other questions. So could IDSA certification process help to check the connector interoperability implementation? Maybe.
If I may go for that, I think I have some knowledge on the IDSA certification. So Shindong, glad to also see you here. And of course, the IDS certification process could, of course, help to check the connector interoperability, because IDS certification has a much broader scope than only the TCK testing. However, and that is a point, it has a much broader scope, and the IDSA certification needs to be lifted because at the moment it's not compatible to the TCKs that we presented here. That's ongoing work in the International Dataspaces Association working groups. But it's definitely a good and interesting extension to what we have here with the TCK. But as I said, it has a much broader scope and focus.
Okay. I hope it's answer for Xin. So there is another one. Can you elaborate the use case of TCK then?
I think I already did that to some degree. So the TCK is important, very important to have some baseline interoperability, especially for frameworks, and needs to be extended by each dataspace according to each dataspace's requirements.
Perfect. So the last question, Rajiv.
I think maybe I wanted to add a bit on that discussion on TCK a little bit. I think TCK helps on, so you have to look at interoperability on different layers, right? So on a particular layer, TCK does give you the interoperability aspects because TCK is related to the specification of the protocol or the specification of project that we just described. And everything that is normative in those specification project is what the TCK is going to check for you to be compliant towards. And if those are container specifications, similar to what Arno was explaining as an example, HTTP, then HTTP-wise, you are compatible with each other. So browser and a server can talk, but the content, neither the browser understands nor the server, because that's always different. And for that, you need additional protocols or standards that you need to comply. So it's on layering side of things. So on a particular layer where the specification sits, it gives you the interoperability. But on the layer that you intend to, specifically if you're talking about the data models, then you need to also know which data models you are going to talk about, so that you are interoperable on that level. And that is something that can be defined either as extensions or something that you need to develop on top of these specifications or projects, or as extensions, because they sit on a bit different layer than these specification projects are targeting. I hope that clarifies.
Perfect. The last question was more practical. So the question was, is the recording of this session will be put on YouTube or somewhere? And it's a yes, we will publish them. All the session of the webinar series will be published on YouTube. I think it's done for the questions. So I really want to thank you for this great presentation, and for sharing your time and your expertise today. Now it's time to do the Raffle giveaway. So we have uploaded the list of attendees to the Raffle websites. I'm gonna just share my screen myself now. And then we will randomly select our winners live on screen. So good luck to everyone. And I will click to do the raffle right now. And so here are our winners. Congratulations to them. We will contact you about collecting your gift shortly. Also, everyone who attends this webinar live gets a 50% discount on the OCX early bird tickets. You will receive email instructions soon. So if you like this webinar, we have more of them coming up this week. You can find the link in the chat and register for the next ones. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day and hope we see you at OCX 2026 in April in Belgium. Thank you. Have a nice day. Bye.